Have you ever noticed how the more available you are, the more people start to overlook you? They assume you'll always reply, always show up, always say yes. But what if I told you that the moment you stop offering yourself so freely is the moment they start realizing what they've taken for granted? It's like a chair that's always pulled out, waiting. People walk by, see it, use it, never ask if it's meant for them. But one day, that chair is gone, and suddenly there's confusion. Where did it go? Why did it feel so empty without it? Or imagine a fire that never goes out, always warm, always burning. Until one day, you stop feeding it. And in the cold that follows, they realize they depended on something they never respected. Because while you're constantly available, constantly giving, constantly proving, you become invisible, familiar, easy to dismiss. But when you pull back, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect, that's when things shift. That's when they realize your presence wasn't owed, it was a gift, and they squandered it. So how do you stop being too available, without turning cold, without explaining yourself, without chasing their attention? How do you quietly shift the balance so they begin to feel your absence and finally realize your worth? Stay until the end, because the last point will show you how to reclaim respect without ever asking for it. Let's get started. Number 1, you teach people that your time is cheap. Let's talk about a behavior that seems generous on the surface, but slowly eats away at your value: being too available. You might think you're being helpful, supportive, even loyal. You answer every text right away. You cancel your own plans to accommodate others. You say yes before anyone finishes asking. But over time, something shifts. People stop saying thank you. They expect you to be there. They start treating your time like it belongs to them, and what once felt like kindness begins to feel like obligation. Here's the truth. When you're always available at a moment's notice, rushing to reply, dropping everything, never letting people wait, you train them to believe your time holds no value. You don't even have to say it. Your actions do the talking. You're showing them that your schedule is wide open, your priorities are flexible, and your own needs are always second. It sounds noble, but it quietly tells the world that your life can be interrupted anytime. And once people see you that way, they stop respecting your boundaries. They don't ask, they assume, they don't consider, they expect. This is where Stoic wisdom offers a powerful correction. Seneca wrote, "People are frugal in guarding their property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful of the one thing in which it is right to be stingy." In other words, people will protect their money, their possessions, their status, but when it comes to your time, they'll take all you'll give them. So if you don't guard your time, no one else will. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Rachel, was the definition of always available. At work, she'd answer emails at midnight. In her friend group, she was the one everyone called when they needed a last-minute ride, help moving, or someone to vent to. At first, she felt needed, important. But gradually, she noticed something. People stopped valuing her presence. They'd cancel plans with her, show up late, take her generosity for granted. One day, after missing her own birthday dinner to help a friend through a breakup, it finally hit her. She wasn't being appreciated. She was being used. So Rachel did something radical. She stopped answering right away. She set boundaries. She made people wait. And slowly, everything changed. People started respecting her time. They reached out with more care. She didn't become less kind. She just stopped making herself so disposable. And in doing so, she reclaimed her value. So how do you protect your time? First, stop responding out of guilt. Not every call needs an immediate answer. Not every request needs a yes. Second, schedule your life around your values, not other people's crises. And third, remember, people respect what you protect. If you don't guard your time, don't be surprised when no one else does. At the end of the day, your time is your life in minutes. Don't give it away so freely. The world will take as much as you offer. Be generous, but never at the cost of your own worth. Because if you act like your time is cheap, people will believe you and treat you accordingly. Number 2, you encourage dependency, not equality. Let's talk about how being too available makes people lose respect for you, and how, in the process, you may unintentionally encourage dependency rather than build equality. When you're always there to help, always ready to solve problems, always saying yes, you might think you're being supportive. But over time, something shifts. People stop showing up for you. They don't offer help. They just expect it. They stop seeing you as a person with your own limits and start seeing you as a resource. Instead of mutual respect, what grows is quiet imbalance. One side gives, the other takes. Here's the truth. When you're constantly available, you don't teach people to stand beside you. You teach them to lean on you hard. You create space for dependence, not strength. They come to you not to share life, but to drain it. You become the fixer, the listener, the rescuer, until one day you realize no one's pouring back into you. What started as kindness becomes emotional exhaustion. You're not building relationships, you're managing emotional debt. This is where Stoic wisdom steps in. Epictetus said, "Associate with those who make you better, not those who weaken your resolve." That means real connection is built on reciprocity. Respect is rooted in balance. You cannot grow beside someone who only comes to take from you. And when you make yourself endlessly available, you attract those who see your time as endless too. They don't see your effort. They don't feel your limits. They only see what they can get next. Let me share a story. There was a man named Brian, kind, thoughtful, always ready to help. He prided himself on being reliable. Friends leaned on him. Colleagues came to him with every minor issue. Family called at all hours. He handled it all until he couldn't. One day, he hit a wall. No one had checked on him. No one had noticed how tired he'd become. He realized he'd built relationships that revolved around his usefulness, not his humanity. So he started stepping back. He stopped replying right away. He let people solve their own problems. And something interesting happened. The ones who valued him stayed and grew stronger. The ones who only depended on him drifted away. So how do you shift from being someone's crutch to being their equal? First, pause before you say yes. Ask yourself, are you helping or enabling? Second, notice who shows up for you when you're not giving. That's where mutual respect lives. Third, make space for your own needs. You are not selfish for setting limits. You're wise. At the end of the day, being too available makes people lose respect for you because you stop looking like a person and start looking like a service. Respect doesn't grow in one-sided support. It grows in mutual strength. So don't let your kindness become your burden. Step back, make room for equality, and watch who rises to meet you there. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 3, you lose control of your boundaries. Let's talk about how being too available makes people lose respect for you, and more dangerously, how it causes you to lose respect for yourself. When you say yes too often, not because you want to, but because you're afraid of disappointing others, you begin to live reactively. You're no longer moving from purpose, you're moving from pressure. You start rearranging your life based on what others need, not what you stand for. And little by little, your sense of self begins to fade. You become agreeable on the outside, but deeply unsettled within. Here's the truth. Always saying yes erodes your inner strength. You chip away at your own boundaries in the name of being liked, being helpful, being accepted. But what you're really doing is training people to expect more of you, more than you truly have to give. They don't see your sacrifice. They don't feel your internal conflict. They just know you always say yes. And over time, they stop asking, they start assuming, and once that happens, you're no longer living intentionally, you're living on demand. This is where Stoic philosophy draws a hard line. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And that mastery starts with your boundaries. You cannot call yourself free if you're always bending to someone else's will. You cannot call yourself strong if your choices are governed by guilt instead of values. The Stoics taught that freedom isn't just about external circumstances, it's about internal discipline. And when you lose control of your boundaries, you give away your sovereignty one small agreement at a time. Let me tell you about someone. Her name's Emily. Emily was the dependable one. She'd take on extra shifts. She'd stay late. She'd rearrange her weekends to fit others' plans. And every time she said yes when she wanted to say no, a small part of her resented it. But she kept going until it started affecting her health, her sleep, her peace. One night, after canceling something important to help someone who barely said thank you, she broke down. That was her turning point. From then on, she started honoring her boundaries. She didn't become cold or selfish, she became steady. And slowly, people began to treat her differently. They asked instead of assumed. They appreciated instead of expected, because she no longer trained them to walk past her limits. So how do you reclaim your boundaries? First, pause before committing. Ask yourself, is this aligned with who I want to be? Second, sit with the discomfort of disappointing others. It won't kill you, but betraying yourself might. Third, practice saying no without explanation. No is a complete sentence. Use it with grace. Use it with power. At the end of the day, being too available makes people lose respect for you because they stop seeing your yes as a choice. They see it as your default. And when that happens, your boundaries aren't boundaries anymore. They're open doors. Close them with care, not to push people away, but to protect the peace you've worked so hard to build. Number 4. You dilute the power of your presence. Let's talk about how being too available makes people lose respect for you, and how, without realizing it, you might be diluting the power of your presence. We all want to be appreciated, included, remembered. So we show up. We're always around. We make ourselves present, thinking that consistency equals value. But there's a problem. When you're constantly visible, constantly reachable, constantly saying yes, people start to assume you'll always be there. They stop noticing you. They stop feeling the weight of your presence. You've become the wallpaper, familiar, reliable, and invisible. Here's the truth. When your presence is constant, it begins to lose its impact. Not because you're unworthy, but because human nature places less value on what feels abundant. The more available you are, the less effort people put into appreciating your time. They don't mean to take you for granted. It just happens. And you may think you're being loyal, committed, generous, but what you're really doing is fading into the background of everyone else's life. This is where Stoic wisdom sharpens our focus. Seneca said, "Even silence, when rare, commands attention." In other words, the power of presence doesn't come from frequency, it comes from intentionality. When you learn to show up deliberately, to choose your moments carefully, you stop being expected and start being felt. Your time becomes something others lean into. Your voice becomes something they lean forward to hear, and your absence begins to speak as much as your presence. Let me tell you about a guy I know. His name's Chris. In every circle, work, family, friends, Chris was the guy who was always there, always answering, always joining, always available. But one day, something strange happened. He realized no one noticed when he went quiet. He skipped a few gatherings. No one followed up. He stopped offering advice. No one asked. That's when it hit him. His constant presence had made him invisible. So he made a change. He pulled back. Not out of bitterness, but with purpose. He started showing up less, but when he did, he brought his full attention. His words carried more weight. His insights landed deeper, and slowly his presence became something people noticed again, not because he was everywhere, but because he wasn't. So how do you stop diluting your presence? First, get comfortable with absence. You don't need to be seen all the time to be remembered. Second, make your time intentional. Be present with your full attention, not just your body. Third, choose quality over quantity. Fewer, deeper interactions build more respect than constant appearances. At the end of the day, being too available makes people lose respect for you, not out of malice, but because we all stop noticing what never steps away. Let your absence create space. Let your presence mean something. And remember, when you give too much of yourself too often, you don't shine brighter. You just disappear quietly. If you've watched the video this far, don't forget to leave a comment with a thank God and give it a like if you enjoyed the content. Your support means a lot and motivates me to keep creating more interesting videos. I hope you find inspiration in them and that we continue learning together. Thank you for your support. Number 5, you attract manipulators instead of mutuals. Let's talk about how being too available makes people lose respect for you, and more importantly, how it invites the wrong people into your life. It starts small. You say yes a little too often. You answer texts at any hour. You cancel your plans to accommodate someone else's crisis. At first, it feels generous, but over time, something darker slips in. Certain people start testing your limits, not because they care, but because they see you don't have any. And the ones who thrive on control, the ones who manipulate through guilt or charm, they notice fast. Here's the truth. When you're always accessible, you become easy to use. Manipulative people are drawn to those who don't assert boundaries because they know you'll bend. They know you'll prioritize their needs, even when it costs you your peace, your rest, your well-being. And here's the worst part. They often disguise it as friendship, as love, as need. But it's not mutual. It's transactional. They don't come to support you. They come to extract from you. And they know exactly what strings to pull because you've shown them where you're soft. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes armor. Marcus Aurelius said, "The man who does not value himself invites others to devalue him." Think about that. If you treat your time, energy, and attention like they're free, others will treat them like they're worthless. If you never say no, you're not just being nice, you're signaling that you'll put yourself second. And manipulators love people who put themselves second because it gives them permission to come first, every time. Let me tell you about someone. Her name's Megan. Megan was the dependable one, the helper, the emotional sponge. Every time a certain friend had drama, Megan dropped everything to listen, to fix, to be there. But this friend never asked how Megan was doing, never showed up when Megan was the one struggling, and any time Megan tried to take space, guilt would flood in. Texts like, "I guess I can't count on you," or "I just thought you were different." It took Megan months to see it clearly. This wasn't a friendship. It was control disguised as closeness, and she'd attracted it by never drawing a line. So how do you stop attracting manipulators? First, recognize your worth. If you don't believe your time and peace matter, no one else will. Second, get comfortable saying no without explanation. You don't owe your energy to everyone who asks for it. Third, notice who respects your boundaries and who tests them. Real connection strengthens you. Manipulation drains you. At the end of the day, being too available makes people lose respect for you because it tells them you don't respect yourself. And those who prey on weakness will always find their way to those who never push back. But you can choose different. Set the boundary, speak the no, and make room for people who meet you with mutual respect, not manipulation in disguise. Number 6. You burn out quietly while others thrive. Let's talk about how being too available makes people lose respect for you, and how, even worse, it slowly leads to your own quiet collapse. It doesn't happen all at once. At first you feel generous, needed, you show up, you help, you give your energy, your time, your support without keeping score. But the more you give, the less you receive. You carry more weight while others walk lighter. And because you've trained yourself never to complain, no one notices when your back starts to break. You burn out silently while they thrive off the fuel you keep handing them. Here's the truth. Giving without boundaries doesn't make you noble. It makes you empty. You smile through exhaustion. You agree when you want to say no. You stay up late helping others, then wake up early to meet obligations you can barely carry. And while you're breaking under the pressure, others get used to your strength. They lean harder, they expect more. They grow because you're shrinking. And eventually, the imbalance becomes so severe, you forget what it feels like to receive. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes a lifeline. Epictetus said, "Give not beyond your strength, lest you lose what is yours to keep." That means your energy, your peace, your mental clarity. These are treasures. And if you pour them out carelessly, you'll have nothing left for yourself. The Stoics believed in contribution, but never at the cost of inner stability. Because when your tank is empty, even your kindness turns bitter. Resentment grows in silence. And the longer you ignore your own limits, the more damage you do, not just to yourself, but to every relationship built on your sacrifice. Let me tell you about someone. His name's Jake. Jake was the dependable one. He covered shifts. He stayed late. He loaned money, listened for hours, helped people move, took calls at 2 a.m. And no one ever stopped to ask how he was doing. Why would they? He never said no. But eventually, Jake couldn't fake it anymore. His health suffered, his relationships felt hollow, and the worst part, he realized most people hadn't even noticed, because they'd gotten used to taking, and he'd never asked them to stop. So how do you stop burning out? First, recognize the difference between giving and overgiving. The first nourishes, the second depletes. Second, create sacred space in your life, time that belongs only to you. Don't negotiate it, don't explain it, protect it. And third, speak up before you break down. You don't have to scream, just stop whispering your pain. At the end of the day, being too available makes people lose respect for you, but more dangerously, it makes you lose touch with yourself. You can't be everything to everyone and still expect to feel whole. Pull back, refill your cup, not out of selfishness, but because what's left of you is too important to waste. Number 7, you diminish your self-worth without knowing. Let's talk about how being too available makes people lose respect for you, and how, without realizing it, you slowly chip away at your own sense of worth. At first, it looks like kindness. You're responsive, you're present. You show up whenever someone needs you, no matter how inconvenient. But beneath the surface, something else might be driving that eagerness, a quiet hunger for approval. You want to be liked, accepted, valued. So you say yes more than you should. You put others first, even when it costs you. And somewhere along the way, without knowing it, you start equating your value with your availability. Here's the truth. When your presence becomes a performance, your self-worth begins to fade. You start living for reactions, hoping someone will finally see how much you're giving, but they rarely do. Because what's offered without boundaries is rarely appreciated. People become accustomed to your yes and start expecting it instead of earning it. And you keep chasing their approval, not realizing that the more you seek it, the more it slips away. This is where Stoic wisdom offers a hard, freeing truth. Seneca said, "He who seeks respect from all ends up respecting none, including himself." In other words, when you bend for everyone, you stand for nothing. You start living in reaction to others instead of in alignment with yourself. And worst of all, you stop listening to your own needs because you're too busy trying to meet theirs. Let me tell you about someone. Her name's Natalie. In every room, Natalie was the one people could count on. She never said no, never asked for help, never let anyone see her tired. But inside, she was crumbling. She wasn't living, she was performing. She thought her constant availability would make people admire her. Instead, they barely noticed. She felt invisible, used. And the more she tried to win their respect, the less she respected herself. Until one day, she stopped. She pulled back. She started setting boundaries, saying no without guilt, protecting her time like it was sacred. At first, people were confused, even upset. But over time, something shifted. The people who stayed began to meet her with real respect, not because she was always available, but because she finally respected herself enough to stop being. So, how do you rebuild self-worth? First, stop tying it to other people's approval. You don't need to be everything to be worthy of anything. Second, value your time. When you treat your attention like it matters, others will too. And third, make space for silence. Not every question needs your answer. Not every call needs your pickup. At the end of the day, being too available makes people lose respect for you because it signals that you don't see your own value. But when you reclaim your time, your energy, your boundaries, you send a new message. I am not here to be consumed. I am here to be respected. And it starts with how I treat myself. If you believe this video can help others, give it a like. It helps the YouTube algorithm show it to more people. And don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content coming your way. Share your thoughts in the comments. I will definitely reply.